Hi, this is Sriyank Siddhartha and welcome to the next module of object-oriented programming in case of Kotlin. Now, in Kotlin, we have some concept of objects declaration and also companion objects. But before learning that, let us first check out what is singleton in Kotlin. Now, in case of Kotlin, whenever we declare class that we were doing so far, we create instance of that class and then access all the variables and methods. But in case of singleton, we have just one instance of the class in the whole application. So once we define a class as singleton, then we just have one instance and that instance is just created by Kotlin internally. That is, we do not have any control over creating the instance of that singleton class. Now, it means that suppose we have a class student which is declared as singleton, then we cannot create the objects of this class. That is, there exists only one object for this class by default, which is created by the Kotlin internally. In simple words, we can say we cannot create objects like student1, student2, and so on. I hope I am clear at this point. And now, in Java, we define singleton by using the keyword of static, such as we have static variables, static methods present inside a class. So in that case, the static variables and methods are not a part of the class. They are just part of class definition, not the objects, right? So in case of Kotlin as well, we don't have any static keyword present, but alternative to that, we have some object declaration and also the concept of companion objects. Now proceeding forward, in Kotlin, we cannot declare static variables and methods compared to Java, right? So we have an alternative to that, such as we can declare object, and these objects are actually acting as a class that can contain the static variables and methods without using the keyword of static. Now, when we declare something as object, the Kotlin internally behind the curtain simply creates a singleton object for us when the program is running. So when we run the program, we get one instance of that object. So how do we declare the object in case of Kotlin? So in Kotlin, let us check out the code snippet. Suppose we have object customer. Now here we don't have class keyword. We are using object keyword, right? So object space customer. This is the syntax. Inside which, suppose I have variable ID of the type of integer. Now this ID is actually acting as a static variable compared to Java. This is not exactly static, but behaving like a static variable like we call static in case of Java, right? Similarly, suppose I have a function register customer. So this method as well is behaving as a static method. Now when we call static variable and static method, if you are from Java background, then you must be knowing how to access the static variables and methods. Now to access these variables and methods, we need to simply use customer.id, let's say 27. So here we are simply using customer. Now this customer is the name of this object, or right, so class name or the object name dot id equal to 27. That looks similar to the code snippet from the Java background. And next we can call customer.register customer and our code inside the function will be executed. Now notice here we are calling without creating any instance. That is, we don't need to declare it as an object explicitly. The Kotlin by default creates an object instance that is a singleton instance for our customer class or the object. So let us now proceed and check out the code inside the demo application. So here inside the IntelliJ IDE, I will simply declare, let's say, class of customer. So here inside the IntelliJ IDE, I have simply created a normal class of customers data that contains the customer's count and also type of customer that simply returns a string value. Now, in order to access this count variable and also this method, inside the main, we need to write these code. So here in order to access the count variable and this method, we are simply calling the object name dot count and object name dot method, right? By simply creating the customer's data object. Now, if I want to use this class as a singleton, so what I will do is I will simply use, instead of class, I will simply use object. So this object keyword simply creates a singleton object for this customer's data. So we no longer can create the instance of this customer data manually because we cannot create the instance of the singleton class. It is done automatically for you. So here I have to remove this at the top level code. And now in order to access this count variable, what we need to do is we need to simply use copy this class name and paste it here. And now again paste it here. So here this count variable is actually acting like a static variable. And also this method is acting like a static method, right? So this is how we access the members of the object like this. And now if I print, let's say print ln, let's say customers data.count, let's see the output. So here in the output we get 98, right? So this count value is currently 98 that we have defined here. Now suppose if I again change the value, let's say to 109, and let's see what happens if we are going to print it. Now this time we get 109. So the value has been updated to 109. So whenever you access this count and change the value, it will be changed to that particular instance that was created by Kotlin, right? Because we don't have any name for that object. We are simply using the class name here, that is our object class dot count and something like that. Similarly, now the same thing applies for this method as well. Call it anywhere and it will be returning Indian string, right? And now at the end, this object customers data can also inherit properties from the superclass. So let us define a class here. Let's call it my superclass. So here this customer data can also inherit the properties of my superclass. Now since this is my superclass, so we need to treat it like an object by using the primary constructor here, right? And now let us make this class as open so as to inherit all the properties. And also if I want to inherit this my method or override this my method inside the customer's data, then also that is possible. So for that we need to simply use the open keyword here and then simply override this function my method. Simply override it. Now inside this, if you want, you can call the super.mymethodstr, and now here let us print this like this. And now you can notice this object is actually behaving like a class because it is actually inheriting all the properties of my superclass. So we can call it a derived class, and this is now acting as a superclass. Now what about this my method? How can we access this my method? So for that, again inside the main method, what I will do is I will simply use customers data dot my method and simply pass, let's say, hello. So this my method is now becoming the static member of this object, right? So we can write a comment line here. So this method, similar to this method, is now acting as a static method inside this object of customers data. And now if you create the instance of my superclass, then you have to access this method here with the help of the object of this my superclass. It is only behaving static after we override it inside the object customers data. So let us now run the code and let's see what it prints. So here we get my superclass has got printed just because of this statement super.myMethod, and object customer data hello is getting printed, which is present here, right? So in this video we learned about how do we declare the object and also how can we find the alternative for the static variables and methods in case of Kotlin, similar to what we do in case of Java. So at the end of this video, let us summarize the properties of the object. So to declare an object, we use the keyword of object, and Kotlin internally creates a class and also the instance and object of that particular class. But that object is only one in count. We cannot create more object or instance again. And these objects can have properties, methods, and also initializers. And now one thing I forgot to show you, that inside the customer's data object, we can also use the init block like this, and you can now initialize whatever you want to inside the init block, right? Like this. So we can have initializers in case of object. And next, we cannot have constructors inside the object, as it makes sense because we do not have any right to do so, to create any instance manually. And the object can also have its superclass like we saw in this video. That is, it simply supports inheritance. Fine. So this was all about the object in case of Kotlin. So that's all for this video. Have a nice day and catch you guys in the next video. This is Sriyank Siddhartha signing off. Thank you.